Welcome back to another deep dive. We've got a really fascinating transcript today from a lecture in Busan, South Korea.
Yeah, it's from February 2026, and it is packed with some pretty intense ideas.
It really is. And, it starts with this scenario that I think might sound incredibly familiar to you,
Y-
especially if you've ever been put in a position to teach, lead, or guide someone.
Oh, absolutely. Anyone who has ever managed a team or mentored someone is going to relate to this.
Right. So there's this Korean language teacher, and they're currently working in Thailand teaching advanced students.
And the stakes here are sky high, right?
Exactly. Because these students are prepping for the TOPIK, which is the test of proficiency in Korean. And passing this exam is, well, it's basically a golden ticket to a Korean university.
Yeah, it could literally change the entire trajectory of their lives.
Exactly. So the teacher knows this, the students know this. Everyone is just working incredibly hard. But despite all that effort, the teacher is hitting this massive, impenetrable wall of frustration.
Right. They describe feeling deeply stifled, like they just can't get through.
Yeah. The students just aren't progressing as fast as the teacher expects. And the teacher feels like this cultural gap is just a canyon.
And, they are exhausted, so they intellectually just chalk it up to differing cultural attitudes toward learning.
Which, usually when we are frustrated with the people we lead, we blame them.
Right.
Or we blame the cultural gap.
Yeah, that is the standard accepted narrative for burnout in intercultural management.
Right. You validate the difficulty
Right.
and you look for ways to manage the slow progress.
Exactly. You look for better coping mechanisms for yourself.
Well, okay, let's unpack this because the speaker in this lecture,
Yeah.
they do not offer that standard validation.
Not at all. It's
Yeah.
actually quite the opposite.
Yeah. The speaker listens to this hardworking, burnt-out teacher and delivers a completely counterintuitive diagnosis. They immediately flip the script.
And it is a profoundly jarring statement to make to someone who is already overwhelmed.
Right. They basically tell the teacher, your frustration has absolutely nothing to do with the student's culture. And it's definitely not their fault.
Yeah, they say the frustration is entirely your own fault. You simply lack the skill to teach.
Wait a minute. Isn't it incredibly harsh to tell a hardworking teacher that their perfectly normal frustration just means they are incompetent?
It sounds super harsh, right? But the speaker is establishing a very specific, uncompromising philosophical framework for leadership right out of the gate here.
Okay, what kind of framework?
Well, within this source text, the speaker invokes this concept of Hongik Ingen.
Oh, right. I'm familiar with that term. It's a foundational concept in Korean philosophy, right? It translates roughly to those who widely benefit the human world.
Yes, exactly. And the speaker sets an exceptionally high bar for the leaders of South Korea, referring to them as these Hongik Ingen or even descendants of heaven.
Wow, okay. That is a high bar.
It is. But regardless of the specific cultural terminology, the mechanical framework the speaker is laying down is all about the absolute locus of control.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, if you claim the mantle of leadership, if you position yourself as someone meant to guide others on a global stage, you do not get to outsource the blame when communication breaks down.
Oh, I see. So it all stops with you.
Exactly. The speaker argues that the very feeling of frustration, that stifling sensation in your chest, is not an emotion to be suppressed. It is a precise diagnostic tool.
Oh. So it's essentially the check engine light on your dashboard.
That is a perfect way to put it.
Because, when you're managing someone and you feel that hot flash of annoyance because they just aren't getting it, your instinct is usually to put a piece of black tape over the check engine light.
Right. You blame the employee. Or you blame the generational gap.
Yeah, and you think you've solved the problem by just ignoring the warning. But the car is still broken.
The car is definitely still broken. And the speaker emphasizes that trying not to feel frustrated while ignoring that underlying mechanical failure is pointless.
Because the system is trying to tell you something.
Exactly. It's sending you a clear signal. It's saying you do not possess the tools required for the task you are attempting.
So the frustration is actually begging you to stop forcing the current method.
Right, and to go out and acquire the capacity you actually lack.
I see how that gives you your power back, honestly. If the problem is just, oh, my students are from a different culture and learn too slowly, well, I'm completely helpless.
Yeah, you become a victim of circumstance in that mindset.
Exactly. But if the problem is that I lack a specific skill, well, I can actually do something about that. I can fix it.
Yes, it shifts the agency back to the teacher.
But that immediately raises a glaring contradiction for me.
Oh. What's that?
Well, this teacher in Thailand is presumably highly credentialed, right?
Mm.
They clearly know the Korean language inside and out.
Right. They are teaching advanced TOPIC classes.
So what skill could they possibly be lacking if their whole job is just transferring knowledge of vocabulary and grammar to these students?
Well, the source text answers that by pulling the camera way, way back.
Okay, how so?
The speaker shifts from critiquing this one individual teacher to delivering a massive systemic critique of human education itself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the skill a teacher lacks isn't a better method for teaching vocabulary. Because, as the speaker boldly declares, the entire era of teaching knowledge is completely dead.
That part of the transcript stopped me in my tracks. I mean, they claim that the hoarding and transmitting of facts is a fundamentally obsolete practice.
Which is pretty radical when you think about it.
It's wild. Because that is what like 99% of our educational institutions are built on.
Right, but the underlying logic here relies on the ubiquity of modern technology. The speaker points out that all of humanity's knowledge is now digitized.
It's shared and instantly accessible.
Exactly. The source explicitly says, just play with how to use AI and you can learn all the knowledge.
So by continuing to act as the sole distributor of facts, the teacher in Thailand is trying to do a machine's job.
Yes. And they're doing it in an era where the machine already does it flawlessly.
Well, it makes total sense why the teacher's frustrated then. They're trying to operate like a biological hard drive in an era of cloud computing.
That's a great analogy. And, the speaker doesn't hold back on modern institutions either.
Oh, I know. They make this stark observation that no one actually goes to school to learn knowledge anymore.
Right. The source specifically calls out elite institutions like Seoul National University and argues that students go there purely for the spec.
Right, the spec. Referring to the specification or the credential.
Yeah, the diploma. It's basically just the societal currency required to pass through the gatekeepers of high-paying jobs.
It's like buying an insanely expensive gym membership solely to get the plastic entry wristband.
Exactly.
You just want to flash it around town and show people you belong to the gym without ever once touching a weight or breaking a sweat.
Because the structure of society demands the wristband.
Yeah, so the students are frantic to get it, and the teacher is frantically trying to force them to memorize a dusty encyclopedia of facts to pass the test to get the wristband.
It's a phantom foundation.
It really is.
And what's fascinating here is how the speaker completely detaches the concept of true education from this frantic chase for credentials.
Right, because if knowledge is freely available to anyone with a smartphone, and degrees are just arbitrary societal checkpoints,
then standing at the front of a room trying to forcefully impart technical language mechanics is a complete waste of human potential.
So the teacher's lack of skill isn't a lack of linguistic knowledge?
No, it's a failure to recognize that the game has completely changed.
Okay, but if we strip away the rote memorization of facts, and we strip away the machinery of handing out diplomas and specs, what is actually left for a human leader to do?
That is the big question.
Right. If a machine handles all the knowledge, what is the teacher's new job description?
The source introduces a necessary pivot here toward what it calls social education.
Social education. Okay.
Yes, because technology now handles the data, human teachers and leaders must focus on how to live in society.
Like how to properly encounter, respect, and integrate different cultures.
Exactly. And crucially, they must figure out how to lead what the speaker calls a future welfare society.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. And honestly, this is the part of the deep dive that I wrestled with the most.
The redefinition of welfare, right.
Yes. The speaker takes this idea of social education and stretches it into a radical redefinition of global welfare.
It is a massive shift in perspective.
It really is. They look at the most universally accepted good deeds, like giving money to someone in need or feeding a starving person or pushing a wheelchair in a flat-out state. That is not true welfare.
The critique is sweeping, and it is totally unsparing.
I was shocked.
The source argues that our current global definition of welfare is entirely misguided. It specifically calls out the world's top intellectuals for mistaking the simple distribution of material goods for actual welfare.
I mean, I really have to push back on the speaker's logic here. I understand criticizing a broken educational system, but how can anyone argue that feeding a hungry person isn't welfare?
I know, it sounds totally counterintuitive.
If someone is starving right in front of you, and you give them a sandwich, that is a verifiable, objective good. To tell listeners that they shouldn't consider that a good deed sounds not only controversial, but incredibly harsh.
Well, That discomfort is intentional. To understand this, we have to look closely at the mechanics of the speaker's argument.
Okay, walk me through it.
The speaker is not telling you to let people suffer.
Okay.
They are not saying you shouldn't help someone in immediate distress.
Okay, good. That would be alarming.
Right. The argument is strictly about the definition of true welfare versus transactional charity. Handing out bread is emergency triage.
Right, it solves the biological problem of hunger for exactly one afternoon.
Yes, but it does absolutely nothing to alter the trajectory of that person's life or fix the broken societal system that made them hungry in the first place.
Oh, I see the distinction. It's treating the symptom rather than curing the disease. It's like a doctor walking into a village suffering from a massive cholera outbreak. Handing out 4V fluids to the sick people is absolutely necessary emergency triage. You have to do it.
Right, you can't just let them suffer.
But the IV fluids aren't welfare. True welfare is the structural engineer who comes in, researches the contamination, and builds a state-of-the-art water treatment plant so the water isn't poisoned in the first place.
That is an excellent way to conceptualize the speaker's point.
Wow. Okay, that makes so much more sense.
Yeah, the source argues that the highest intellectuals and leaders in the world are currently just handing out 5E bags and patting themselves on the back, calling it welfare.
So if the world's leaders are just throwing money at symptoms, they're basically failing.
According to this lecture, yes, they need to be building the water treatment plans of society, so to speak.
True welfare requires deep, rigorous research by those Hongik Ingen global leaders, right, into how to properly guide and systemically uplift humanity.
Precisely. And this connects directly back to the concept of social education. The speaker argues that if we don't know what true education is, we can't truly do welfare. True welfare is educating people on how to navigate society, solve complex problems, and integrate culturally so they become empowered and self-sustaining.
So you build a society where people don't need the bread handed to them because they are an active, integrated part of a healthy social fabric.
Yes, that is the ultimate goal.
That is a massive paradigm shift. I mean, it takes charity from being this passive act of pity to an active, intellectually rigorous act of systemic leadership.
It changes the entire foundation of how we help people.
But this leaves me wondering how this grand global philosophy about systemic welfare and the death of the knowledge era actually applies to our stressed-out Korean language teacher in Thailand.
Right, bringing it back down to the classroom level.
Yeah, like how does a single language teacher build a societal water treatment plan for a classroom of TOPIC students?
Well, the source actually brings the philosophy right back down to earth with a very specific roadmap.
Okay, what's the roadmap?
It begins with a bold prediction. The speaker states that by the year 2030, an enormous wave of international students will flood into South Korea.
Oh, really?
Yes, and these students won't just be looking for academic credentials, they will be seeking true life guidance and social education.
And the speaker warns that South Korea is currently completely unprepared for this influx.
Totally unprepared.
Because the institutions are still stuck in that obsolete paradigm of handing out specs and forcing rote memorization.
Exactly. So to prepare for this future and to solve the teacher's immediate classroom burnout, the speaker gives a direct, mechanical piece of advice.
I'm ready for it. What do they say?
Stop trying to aggressively teach from a position of authority.
Oh, just stop.
Just stop. The source uses a very specific word to describe what happens when you try to force instruction across a cultural divide. It says things get tangled.
Tangled, like a knot.
Yes.
So the harder the teacher pulls on their own authority, trying to force the Thai students to conform to Korean learning speeds, the tighter and more frustrating the knot becomes.
Exactly. You are just making the problem worse by forcing it.
So how do they untangle it?
The alternative to pulling on the knot is absolute vulnerable honesty.
Honesty.
Yeah, the speaker advises the teacher to literally look at the students and say, "We don't know either, let's study together."
Wait, really?
Yes. The source notes that this kind of honesty actually makes you popular.
But wait, a highly credentialed teacher is supposed to look at their students and say, I don't know. Doesn't that completely destroy their credibility?
It might seem that way in the old knowledge paradigm, sure. But in this new framework, it is a highly advanced pedagogical tool.
Because you aren't the source of facts anymore.
Right. By utilizing vulnerability, the teacher instantly removes the friction of cultural misunderstandings.
You step down from the pedestal of the absolute authority demanding compliance.
And you place yourself on the exact same side of the table as the student. You are looking outward at the material together.
Okay, so what do they actually do once they are sitting on the same side of the table?
The speaker introduces what we can call the play protocol.
Play protocol.
Yes. The ultimate method is to literally play with the students, have fun with them, turn assignments into games, and most importantly, explore AI together to find the knowledge.
Because the AI holds the factual data.
Exactly. The teacher's role is to be the human companion navigating that data with the student.
Wow. It completely changes the dynamic. It goes from a strict boss barking orders at tired employees on a factory floor to like a team locking arms and trying to tackle an escape room together.
That's a fantastic way to picture it.
You aren't losing your authority as the leader. You're just changing the nature of the game. You're facilitating an experience rather than dictating facts.
And the mechanical benefit of this play is profound. By stepping back from the pressure of forcing memorization, the teacher's effective filter drops.
The frustration clears.
Yes. And for the first time, the teacher will be able to truly see the students.
Oh, because you aren't blinded by your own expectations.
Yeah. Right. You observe how they interact, how their specific culture approaches problem solving, and how they think.
And once you understand the mechanism of their minds through collaborative play, then you can actually offer them genuine guidance.
Exactly. The speaker wraps up the lecture by reassuring the teacher. They remind the teacher that they are smart and that with just this small shift in perspective,
Just adjusting the steering wheel slightly from dictator to co-explorer.
right, they can easily solve their classroom problem. It's an incredibly uplifting resolution to what started as a very blunt reality check.
It really is. It perfectly synthesizes the entire philosophy. You recognize that your frustration is a signal to upgrade your own skills.
You abandon the obsolete role of biological hard drive.
You embrace vulnerability, utilize modern AI tools, and guide your followers through collaborative play.
And that is how you enact true systemic welfare for the people you lead.
Man, let's just take a breath and look back at the ground we just covered today. We started with a frustrated teacher in Thailand, trying to push students through a high-stakes exam.
And from there, we learned that our own frustration isn't something to blame on others.
Right, it's a check engine light signaling that we need to evolve our own leadership skills. We discovered the bold reality that the era of rote knowledge is entirely dead, replaced by instant access to AI and a somewhat hollow societal chase for degrees and specs.
We also explored a challenging new definition of welfare, realizing that true leadership requires systemic research and guidance building the water treatment plant, so to speak, rather than just the transactional handing out of emergency supplies.
And finally, we learned that the future of leadership, teaching, and managing across cultures is deeply rooted in honesty, vulnerability, and play.
It really comes full circle.
It does. And, whether you are literally teaching a language class, mentoring a junior colleague at your office, or just trying to navigate complex cultural differences in your daily life, this perspective shift could be exactly what you need.
Absolutely.
Moving from forcing top-down instruction to co-exploring through collaborative play might be the perfect tool to untangle the knots you're facing.
It all routes back to that initial wall of frustration. The wall isn't there to stop you. It is there to show you that your current tools aren't working and you need a new way to climb.
Such a powerful reframe.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to consider as you go about your day.
Let's hear it.
If, as the source claims, all human knowledge is already digitized and accessible, and the traditional act of teaching facts is becoming completely obsolete,
Yeah.
what is the one uniquely human skill or trait you possess right now that a machine could never play at? And how will you use that specific trait to genuinely guide someone tomorrow?
Wow. That is an incredible question to leave off on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the true nature of teaching, welfare, and leadership. Keep exploring the sources, keep questioning your own assumptions, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.